Hello, CS artists. My name is Claudia, and I'm a senior at a specialized high school for the arts, and welcome to part 3 of my Spotlight series. As I've stated before, the purpose of the series is to encourage my peers to pursue their desired fine or performing art beyond high school. So in order to help them out, we'll be covering writing, acting, instrumental music, dance, musical theater, vocal arts, and production and design. So today's podcast will focus on careers that have to do with the visual arts, and I'd like to welcome my first guest, Flynn Linehan. Flynn Linehan is an admissions counselor at Parsons School of Design, where she has worked since 2013. Currently, Linehan is based in Los Angeles as the new school's regional admission representative for Southern California. She holds an MFA in Fine Arts from Parsons School of Design, where her graduate work focused primarily on printmaking, drawing, and experimental photographic practices. Linehan also holds a BFA from the School of the Museum of Fine Arts at Tufts University.
Hi everybody, nice to meet you. My name is Flynn Linehan. I'm an admissions counselor at Parsons School of Design, and I'm really excited to talk to you today.
All right, so let's get started. Why don't we just talk a little bit more about your profession and kind of what to expect within your field?
Sure. So I think for a lot of prospective students, they maybe don't know exactly what admissions counselors do, but we are really there to help facilitate the application process, to hopefully demystify it and make it easy to navigate. Personally, I travel a lot throughout the year. I'm actually the Southern California representative for the whole new school. So I visit high schools throughout the area. I give presentations. I talk about the new school and Parsons in particular. I'm also a great resource for portfolio development. Myself and most admissions counselors for art schools do attend events such as the National Portfolio Day to really give that individual feedback on your work. Does that kind of help to address that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So let's just talk a little bit about the application process. It seems like the portfolio aspect of it is very significant when it comes to applying. So can you, I guess, give some insight to what maybe Parsons expects from applying artists?
Yeah, so one thing I always like to mention first is that everything I'm going to say is really specific to Parsons, and every school you're looking at is going to have slightly different admission requirements. I always recommend that students, this could be a good guide to get started, but always reach out to the schools that you're applying for, to their counselors, and they can talk you through specifically what they want to see in a portfolio. For Parsons in particular, we have a process where students apply directly to a major. However, there is a first-year curriculum. So even if you're admitted to fashion or photography or fine art, or whatever your desired major might be, you're still going to enter into the same first year as every other student. And for that reason, we want to see a portfolio that shows breadth, experimentation, and ability with a range of media, and we definitely don't expect to see a major specific portfolio. So like if you're applying to fashion design, you don't need to know how to make dresses right now. You don't need to know how to craft a pattern or physically make a garment. What we would really want to see is that you can get off the page, work with your hands, maybe some 3D making more generally. That would be awesome to see. But we also would welcome your painting and drawing works. For any student, we love to see process, so sketchbook pages. In short, I would say really what we're looking for is your best work in any medium, regardless of the major that you're applying for. Another thing that is really important to us is your critical thinking and conceptual thinking. So why are you making? What are you making? Ask yourself these kinds of questions as you curate your portfolio, because really we're getting to know you through the work that you're sharing with us, so we want it to be meaningful to you.
And that seems really nice too, just because not everybody is expected to, be so strong in all of the different mediums because there's just so many. So it's really great that you guys are encouraging them to just showcase what they can do and the best they can. And if they want to try to learn more new things in college, then you guys are welcoming of that. So I really dig that. Yeah.
Yeah, and we hope that it makes it, more welcoming, because when students are admitted, they're going to have that first year to not only gain technical proficiency, but also to be introduced to majors that they might not have considered. And you may be at an arts specific high school, but many students are not going to have these advanced art classes. So you might not know that you want to do game design or something that you don't have access to in high school, like architecture coursework. Most students don't have that, so we don't expect you to have it in your portfolio.
And touching back on what you said about research, just because you are representing one school, it is definitely important to research the schools you do want to go to, because every one of them is just a little different in their own way. So yes, research your schools, everybody.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you'll find, while I'm saying that we want to see a diverse kind of more breadth portfolio, there might be schools, and there are schools, that want a portfolio that looks like your major, and you have to have that to get in. So it's really good to ask those questions, starting, if you're a rising senior, I think really starting now and in the fall, that's when you should start reaching out to those schools and starting to open that dialogue about what a portfolio should include.
Now that we got that out of the way,
cool.
We can continue again.
Yeah.
So I'm actually a little curious about your education, your personal education, because I know that you've been a part of Parsons, and you've been a part of School of Museum, at Tufts University. They're all very rigorous collegiate programs.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, do you have anything to say about your personal experience learning there?
Yeah, so as you can see from my bio, I've kind of been art school all the way. And I was really involved in the arts in high school as well. And I kind of identified pretty early on that I knew that was what I wanted to do in college. So I'm very familiar with the process of getting that portfolio ready, making my dad carry it all to the National Portfolio Days. So I'm sure that you're all going to be doing that next year. In terms of my educational background, I did start at the museum school, or the School of the Museum of Fine Arts at Tufts. And I chose that school in particular because of how open the curriculum was and how much opportunity there was to explore not only my preferred media, but also the liberal arts. I really liked that affiliation with Tufts. And then moving on to graduate school, I selected Parsons for a range of reasons, and a lot of those reasons are why I continue to work there and enjoy meeting students who want to go to Parsons. But I loved that it's part of the new school. This is a bigger university, so I had access to, not only these really rigorous art classes, but also coursework outside of visual arts. I did my MFA in fine arts. It's kind of not a discipline-based program, but you can really work with whatever medium you like, but it's really geared towards individual critique, working with mentors, and kind of really nurturing the critical foundation of your art practice. So those were the reasons that I picked that school. I also love that it was in New York City, and I love the community. I really think that the community and student body at Parsons and at the new school at large was really a huge part of my decision to go there for grad school.
And would you say, researching for that school, did you sort of expect the environment that you were placed in?
That's a great question. I advise that anybody looking at a school go and visit it. I think for me, a big differentiator was going to the campus. I love that Parsons is an urban campus, so it's really kind of built into the fabric of New York City. I like that it wasn't closed off from the surrounding community. Whereas some students might want a closed campus or a more traditional campus experience. So I think visiting is a good way to get that feel. In terms of the community, it's going to be a little bit different for every program. Mine was pretty small, so I liked that. We do have really small class sizes in general for our undergrad students as well. I mean, you're looking at an average class of 12 to 15 students. And we have our average student-to-faculty ratio university-wide is about 9-to-1. So that individualized kind of one-on-one experience is what I wanted, and that's what I got. So I was really happy with that. But again, some students might thrive in an environment where it's more of a traditional university where you have big classes and lecture halls as opposed to seminars or small studio classes that are critique driven. So, there's something different for everybody.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned earlier that you sort of identified that you'd like to be involved in art at a pretty young age. Would you say that your family supported you and your friends? Like, did you have a good support system with you when you decided that, yeah, I really want to do art?
I personally was fortunate because my parents are involved in the arts themselves. So and not everybody has that access or that understanding on a personal level from their families. But I was lucky in that, and I had that extra kind of advice from my parents who are art practitioners. So that was definitely beneficial. However, I felt that my high school did not have a very robust art curriculum. So, I think for any student who might be in that situation, you have to kind of seek out those opportunities on your own, make art outside the classroom if you can. For me, I tried to go to as many museums as possible. I think that, online resources are really important too. You can't always get to all those museums. You maybe can't make that field trip to New York to go to the MoMA or the Met, but it's all online. So I think really seeking out art and culture in whatever form you can really enhances the portfolio, and that access to art is super important.
Mm-hmm. And for students who may not have the best support system when they're deciding they want to go into art, do you usually have any advice you can share with people who are trying to make up a good argument for why they want to pursue that sort of art?
Yeah, you mean an argument like for their parents or their teachers or something like that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say first and foremost, there are no guarantees no matter what career path you go into. I think it can be really scary as, for parents to see that there isn't a direct path to a career. However, I actually think that the arts are a super versatile field. Like, there's literally an artist working everywhere. It is such an integral part of the way we experience the world. So I think there are no shortage of opportunities career-wise. In terms of picking a school, I think that parents should really look into the career services offered by the institution. What is that institution doing to support their students before they go out into the world? For example, at our institution, we have an office of we have really robust career services at the new school. So that's something that sets students up for success afterwards. Most of our students are doing internships. That's another thing to ask about. Really seeing what support there is while in school to prepare students for after school, I think, is a good way for parents to become more comfortable.
Mm-hmm. And I definitely feel like it should be okay to accept the arts as something that's significant in our lives, just because we are a slowly changing world, and we should be being more open to diversity and just more, maybe unorthodox sort of practices, just because, in the art world, we can still thrive, and we might even do better than that than a practical major. So I'm really glad that you touched base on institutions providing that sort of support, and we should be looking for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really think that, the world needs creative thinkers, like, now more than ever. So those are the artists. I think it's so important to have creative thinkers in every single field. They're everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And you can speak from personal experience, or maybe just as an admissions counselor. What would you say are the hardest aspects for an art major when transitioning from a high school into a rigorous collegiate program?
I think that every student is going to face different challenges, and it's kind of going to probably come from their backgrounds and, in what way they're adjusting to college. For some students, it might be academic rigor. Certainly adjusting to college academically can be a big change. For some students, it might be adjusting to a new environment. Personally, I'm from Maine, which is way up in New England. So it's a super different environment than I went to college in, which was a more urban setting. And I know for me that was a big adjustment, and I was really excited about it, but it was a learning experience. So that might be the case for some students. And And then I think for a lot of students who maybe were the best artists in their high school, you're suddenly going to be one of a lot of the best artists in their high school. So really adjusting, I think, to that environment of thriving in a community where everybody is super talented and super engaged. I think that can be stimulating, but often challenging too when you first start in art school.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, that's also the point, isn't it? Just to be like surrounded by like-minded individuals and people who can, give you the critique that you need, and just being challenged is the sort of great part of a college experience, especially within the arts.
Yeah, absolutely. Ideally, students are coming to us because they want to be challenged and, be around people who are just as incredible as they are.
Mm-hmm. So I guess at Parsons, maybe this might be specific, or because I know that you don't speak for everybody. Do you know, I guess, how many art majors or just artists in general you probably admit annually?
Oh, I would probably have to look to see how many students on an annual basis are admitted. It varies a little bit year to year, and it tends to grow a little year to year. As far as our university is concerned, the university is about 10,000 students in total, and about 5,000 of those students are at Parsons. So we are one of the largest art schools that you're going to find. But we kind of try to maintain those small class sizes as well. But it is a big school. What was the second part of the question? I'm sorry.
I think, wow, I can't even remember. I think I was just mentioning, I guess, oh no, I think I really just asked like how many you, I guess, admit each year, but we can talk about the portfolio, which I know is like, pretty important when applying for colleges. Yeah, so for the portfolio, do you guys also have a writing requirement that might take more focus too?
Yeah, so we don't require an artist statement or any additional writing in that sense. You do have to submit an essay as part of the common application. And that prompt is simply why the new school. So some students kind of approach this more with regard to their art practice, but some students speak more to the environment or New York City or something like that. So it's really open-ended. For the portfolio itself, we just ask that students submit 8 to 12 images. It is a small portfolio, and that's going to be submitted through slideroom.com. So you're probably going to be using this for a lot of your other applications as well. We also require something called the Parsons Challenge, which I think definitely freaks students out a lot, maybe because challenge is in the title, but basically what we're looking for with this for our BFA applicants is that you can create a new work of art that's simply based on something that's within your portfolio already. The full prompt is going to be outlined right on our website for students to really dig into. But again, we just want to see that you make a new work inspired by something in your portfolio. The writing that you'll have to do is associated with the Parsons Challenge. So we want to see that you can talk about your process, tell us how you approach the Parsons Challenge, and this is up to 500 words, and you just submit it right there with your portfolio.
That's really cool how Parsons has sort of a specialized challenge and aspect of the portfolio for others to look onto. So that goes back to research, everybody. Just make sure that you're looking at what other requirements that colleges may have or may want you to consider, just so you might, look more or just like stand out more. So
yeah. And I think you'll see in your college research, a lot of schools will have something similar to this challenge, but oftentimes they're more kind of directed in terms of what you have to draw or make. But a lot of schools have a home test. So definitely doing your research ahead of time is important so that you can, not feel rushed to create that, because it is an important part of what we look at. I do see a lot of applications where I feel that the Parsons Challenge was an afterthought or where it was not considered as strongly as the portfolio. And that's understandable, but it's also really good to see that students put a lot of thought into their final submission for the Parsons Challenge.
Mm-hmm. And I guess, do you have a priority in the organization of the portfolio? So maybe it's thematic. So like pieces on, feminism or something societal, worldly.
Yeah, that's a great question. I see, I would say that I see a lot of portfolios that are more thematic or conceptual, especially from artists who may be more advanced and, who are already making work around these bigger ideas. But I also see really successful portfolios that are a bit more wide ranging and do not have one central theme. So either can be a good approach. It kind of depends on your practice and the level at which you're working.
Cool. I meant to mention this earlier, but as someone who, was involved in the arts throughout high school and college, in addition to transitioning from high school to college, what about, college to professional life? Is there a sort of common trend you see within the students who may go on to pursue their art as a career?
Yeah. So you're kind of asking how students manage that transition from college artist into career artist, or maybe what our students are doing after graduation.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of people think that within the world of the arts, it's sort of more difficult to find a steady job or maybe just something that's, very stable just for the it might be difficult, and that intimidates a lot of our students. So is there like anything you see that's common or maybe that they go on to do?
Yeah, so in terms of some common trajectories after school, at Parsons, we do have about an 87% job placement rate within a year. So we're really excited that our students find such success after graduation. A lot of students end up working for places where they may have had an internship or started working while they're in school. So I think that's one good thing to keep in mind. Try to seek out some of those opportunities while you're still studying if you can. I think the more robust your resume when you leave, I think that can also really help in terms of finding employment. Many students are also doing freelance work, not only when they graduate, but also when they're students. A lot of times students are seeking out those kinds of opportunities from day one. So I think, to be a successful artist, being driven and self-motivated and seeking out opportunities everywhere is really important. We have a lot of students that go on to graduate work. We have a lot of students who may be doing more entrepreneurial projects, especially those coming out of our business program. We do offer a BBA, a Bachelor's of Business Administration in Strategic Design and Management. So some of those students are engaged in creative pathways that maybe not directly related to studio making. And we have many, many students who are, employed at bigger companies, a lot of freelancers. It's really, really varied.
And just for you personally, so you're obviously within admissions and within the faculty at an art school. I guess what sort of prompted your decision to go into that field rather than the common like practicing visual artist?
Yeah, I mean, like for me personally, I started working in admissions when I was still a graduate student, and I found that I really love working with developing artists and having a hand in helping them shape their portfolios and finding success in their college journey. So that really appealed to me, and that was kind of why I went in this pathway. I enjoy working in higher education. But that was a personal choice for me. I have classmates and alums from my graduate and undergraduate programs who did things like pursuing residency opportunities after grad school, showing with galleries. So there are lots of different ways that you can, kind of pivot from school to career.
And do you have any advice for people who may also be considering that sort of pathway? So maybe like opportunities that they should seek out?
For a pathway of admissions, or for going into, maybe art practice?
I think just like admissions or faculty within a school as a field.
Okay, good question. So for admissions, I think if it's something you're interested in, definitely thinking about, do you like working with students? Do you like counseling students on their educational goals? I think if you want to work specifically within an art school, I think having having that background in the visual arts is really useful for counseling students about portfolio development. And then depending on what you want to do, there's different kinds of degrees that you might need. There are graduate pathways in counseling. I did not do that. I have an MFA, that was kind of my pathway into this. If you want to teach on the faculty side, so if you want to be an instructor in a university setting, generally you do need a graduate degree related to the field that you're going to be instructing. So like for me, I'm qualified to teach at the university level since I have an MFA. It's a terminal degree. So if that's a student school, then then they'll likely have to look at higher education beyond the bachelor's degree.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense, definitely. Just to like have that experience will be obviously very useful for students to base off of.
Yeah.
What's my next question? I think I was going to ask, at Parsons, the new school. So, is there sort of a balance between art and academics? Like, do you guys also have a focus to make sure that they're, like keeping up with their academics too?
Yeah, so our curriculum doesn't have traditional gen ed requirements, but we do have a really robust offering of liberal arts coursework that's part of your curriculum. Although we do, the bulk of the curriculum is going to be art-oriented and practice-driven because for most students at Parsons, they're pursuing a Bachelor of Fine Arts at the undergrad level. Our business students in the BBA program have more of a mix of liberal arts, studio, and business coursework, so it's a little bit more varied there. We are part of a bigger university, the new school, and within that university, we have a liberal arts college called Eugene Lang. And we offer a joint degree between Lang and Parsons. This is our BA, BFA, a dual degree pathway. We call it BAFA for short. And for students who might have that really deep interest in both liberal arts and the studio arts, that could be a good option. It's a 5-year program. And in that case, really, you're having a pretty in-depth focus on your liberal arts discipline in addition to your studio arts. But for really any student at Parsons, they can take advantage of liberal arts coursework while enrolled because of that great relationship with Lang. And I should also mention that we do have a performing arts college within the university as well. We have the New School for Jazz, the New School for Drama, and Manus, which is our more classical conservatory style program. And students enrolled at the new school can take advantage of curricular opportunities there as well, even if they're in one of our other programs.
So does Parsons have a program where students may rent out studio space, or do they have a provided studio space or just an area to work with outside of classroom times?
Yeah, that's a good question. So a lot of students, I'll speak first to our on-campus resources. So one thing I recommend if you're thinking about Parsons and you're not able to come to New York, we do have a virtual tour online, which is awesome. So you can see all of our spaces. We do have studios. In terms of personal studio space, it's really going to differ a little bit for our programs and how space dependent students are. So for example, our fine arts students, they have shared designated studio spaces when they're seniors. Prior to that, they utilize more communal workspaces, but there is storage for your equipment, for your materials. You have lockers, so you don't have to haul everything to campus every day. But yes, there is that designated space at a later time. For many of our other majors, there are going to be more designated workspaces as well. It's just really going to vary. But we do have open kinetic classroom spaces, especially within our making center, which some students may be familiar with from visiting campus, but if not, definitely do the virtual tour. This combines shared workspace, classroom space, as well as resources like your wood shop is right there. We have 3D printers and digital looms, as well as support staff a cage to check out your equipment. So really, we have amazing facilities, and anything you need and any support you might need to make and work in your projects, and you're going to get it. Some students, I would say, especially after the freshman and sophomore years, many students do move off campus. We are an urban campus, so we don't guarantee housing for 4 years. So a lot of those students who are moving off campus may make use of a studio space within their apartments or off campus. It just kind of depends.
And just a personal question for you. Was there a certain medium that you preferred above others, or maybe when you got into college, you were still sort of hanging on to like one medium more than others before you started getting like introduced to new styles?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think a lot of students do come into college thinking they know exactly what they want to study, and I was no exception. I definitely wanted to be a photographer, and that was my preferred one and only medium when I started college. I would say that within about the course of a semester, I realized that photography is really important to me and I love using it as my medium. However, I also want to explore other opportunities and other ways of making that I hadn't considered before, largely in part due to what I worked with and explored in my first year. I think the first year is really, really transformative for students. In any university setting, but in art school in particular, because you're exposed to so many new ideas and materials. So over the course of those 4 years, I really explored different types of photography, but I also really built into a drawing and painting practice. Definitely all grounded under the fine arts, but with a more diverse ways of making as opposed to just photography. Some students come in and they want to do fashion from the get-go, and that is them for the whole 4 years, or they know they want to be an architect. So some students definitely do stick to that path, and some are more like me where they kind of vary once they come to school.
Mm-hmm. And that's really neat too, just because, you know, in your bio, you mentioned that you also picked up printmaking and drawing. Yeah. So I guess
printmaking is something that I did some when I was an undergrad, but it was not my main focus. And then in grad school at Parsons, I was able to take an elective class in printmaking, and it was really an open class, so we learned a lot of new and more experimental approaches, and it really actually completely reshaped my projects and totally changed my thesis. So I think that's a good example of how you can always keep evolving in terms of what you're making, because at that point I'd already finished school, or undergrad anyway, but I still wanted to explore, and it was great to have that opportunity to do it.
Do you think that it's ever too late to maybe switch like focuses or switch tracks?
Definitely not. I know people who did not even get into the arts until after they even finished a bachelor's degree in something else. So it's not too late. I would say if you're, at this point in high school where you're thinking about it, that's great because you have that leg up and you can start to prepare now. I would say that one good thing to think about is different degree programs and different pathways to the arts. So say you're like in your first semester of senior year, you've never taken an art class, you have no portfolio, but you think you might be interested in going into a visual art career. I think you should look at all the art programs out there, but I think it's also good to think about maybe a university setting where you can enter in a more general way and then move into the arts once enrolled. That's a good option. Maybe BA pathways. I think that for a BFA, you have to be ready enough at the time of application to have that portfolio.
And I'm just very grateful that you took time out of your schedule, which I'm sure is busy, to talk with me. And I feel like I've learned so much, even though I'm not so much of an art major, but I feel like so many people from my school will benefit this. And I'm just really grateful for you to spend time with me today.
Yeah, definitely. Likewise, it was great to meet you. You have great questions. And I hope I get to visit your school in the fall. Maybe I'll see you in person.
Definitely. I'll be here if you ever want to reach out again, and I can maybe just talk a little bit about our school, maybe help you tour it. I'd love to get to see you in person.